Thunder rolled across the heavens, muffled in the low-hanging clouds as though the sky itself were trapped in a deep, protracted slumber. Across the kingdom of Wujiang, an old legend gripped the hearts of its people. Once every century, the Dragon Emperor would emerge from the depths of an enchanted lake hidden among the mist-shrouded mountains. Folk stories claimed that the Emperor was no mere ruler, but a divine being woven into the fabric of existence, controlling the flow of rivers and the cycle of rains. When he awoke from his subterranean palace of jade, it was said, he would judge mortal deeds and restore cosmic balance to a world teetering on the edge of self-destruction. Generations feared and revered the legend in equal measure, for the Dragon Emperor's judgments were absolute, immune to mortal plea or persuasion. In the hinterlands of Wujiang, perched on the slopes of rugged cliffs overlooking a narrow valley, lay the farming village of Lingmu. Farmers there cultivated fresh rice paddies, and the meadow beyond them blossomed with peonies. According to the oldest villagers, the calm turquoise lake beneath swirling mists sat only a half-day's journey away, yet no one dared to approach it. Parents would hush their children into silence whenever the conversation drifted toward that ancient water. It was rumored the lake was guarded by spirits bound to the will of the Dragon Emperor, the ephemeral guardians and watchers of mortal conduct. From time to time, unusual lights were seen dancing upon the lake's surface, especially on moonless nights, as though guiding the devout or foolhardy to venture near. The day everything changed was unexpectedly warm for spring. Fishermen along the riverbanks observed an unearthly stillness in the air, and travelling merchants reported flocks of birds migrating away from the mountains. It was Li Yusheng, a bookish young man with a penchant for old tales, who first realized that the century cycle was about to complete. He was the orphaned son of a humble scholar, taught to read the ancient scrolls from an early age. His father, known for his translations of half-forgotten legends, had left behind a weathered codex detailing the times of the Dragon Emperor's ascension. One evening, as Yusheng pored over the codex by candlelight, something in the text jolted his heart. This was the appointed year of the Emperor's return. Recognizing the confusion that might grip his neighbors, Yusheng raced to the village elders to share the dire news. The elders treated the legend with solemnity, recalling how storms or droughts often befell the land every century when the emperor began to stir. Some among them whispered that it was only the prayers of the populace that kept the emperor's destructive rage at bay. The reverence for the Dragon Emperor had deep roots in Wujiang. Centuries past, a man many believed to be the emperor's trusted envoy had walked among mortals, collecting tithes of the harvest. In exchange, the emperor granted bountiful rains. Over time, however, mortals grew selfish, waging wars and hoarding resources. Then, during the darkest hour, the emperor's wrath came as monstrous floods that destroyed entire principalities. Those survivors who remained prayed earnestly for mercy. Ready or not, that era of divine judgment had arrived yet again. Encouraged and partly frightened by the elders, Yusheng undertook a pilgrimage to the fabled lake, accompanied by 3 companions: Dornlan, a skilled herbalist with an adventurous spirit; Gengsin, the burly son of the village blacksmith; and Mei Lin, a traveling musician, stopping briefly in Lingmu due to failing health. Each of them had reasons to seek the Dragon Emperor. Dornlan believed that a rare healing lotus, rumored to cure her ailing mother, might be found floating on the enchanted lake. Gengsin harbored lingering guilt over a violent act, longing to repent and find peace for the nightmares that plagued him. And Mei Lin, who had lost her voice after a tragic incident, yearned for redemption, for the emperor to unlock the saddening hush that had settled within her soul. The group set out at dawn, winding through paths rarely trodden by mortal feet. Morning fog clung to them, wetting their hair and eyelashes, muting the song of distant birds. As they hiked deeper into the forested mountains, time seemed to dissolve, the air growing dense with the hum of hidden insects and the faint whisper of old spirits. Towering pine trees, their needles shimmering from the last vestiges of dew, took on the shape of silent sentinels. The path narrowed, weaving between boulders and steep ravines, until a veil of mist parted like a stage curtain to reveal the legendary lake. The lake was vast and still, mirroring the surrounding ridges in its placid surface. A phantom wind stirred fragments of cloud that drifted just above the water, forming columns of vapor akin to specters. Dawn Lan was the first to speak, her voice uncertain in the hush. "We should heed the elders' instructions and wait here until dusk," she said. "That's when the Emperor is most likely to rise." Gangsing nodded, settling near the bank, scanning the water as if anticipating the thunderous breath of a dragon any moment. Mei Lin carried her lute silently, though it had been months since she'd played a single note. Yu Sheng crouched to examine the shallows, swirling his hand through ripples that danced with a pale green light. By the time the sun began to dip behind the peaks, the landscape came alive with an ethereal glow. Threads of golden sunlight wove through the pine trees, their long shadows stretching across the water like hungry fingers. A faint rumbling vibrated the air, as though the heartbeat of the world thumped beneath their feet. Yu Shun recalled the words inscribed in his father's codex. "When the Emperor stirs, the earth trembles, the winds hush, and the waters whisper of the dawn of reckoning." Heart hammering in his chest, he motioned for his companions to remain steady. Suddenly, the surface of the lake parted in a swirl of dark, glimmering scales. A colossal serpentine shape spiraled upward, fanning out an array of spines that reflected the last rays of twilight. The being towered above them, dripping with rivulets of water that shimmered in shifting color. Its head was crowned with ivory horns, and its luminous eyes cold and ancient swept the shore, taking in each human figure. A hush descended, so profound that even the nearby insects ceased their chirping. The Dragon Emperor had awakened from his century-long slumber. 2 orbs of cobalt fire hovered in the Emperor's eye sockets, revealing neither wrath nor mercy, but rather a cosmic detachment that humankind had always struggled to comprehend. The lake's surface stirred with arcs of blue electricity. Clouds overhead rumbled. The Emperor spoke not with a mouth, but through the wind itself, his voice resonating in the minds of the 4 visitors. "Who comes before me? Do you seek favor, or do you seek judgment?" Yu Sheng swallowed the knot in his throat and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the black silt at the shore. "Great Dragon Emperor," he began, "our souls have brought us here. We come to ask forgiveness, to seek understanding, to restore what we have lost. The land is changing, suffering beneath mortal conflicts and greed. Truthfully, we do not fully comprehend your ways, but—" His voice trembled. "We implore your guidance." A low rumble echoed from the Emperor's throat, and for a moment lightning illuminated the swirling clouds. "Mortals, stray from the path once more," the Emperor's voice rumbled. "In my slumber, I have heard your pleas from across the veil of dream and reality. The time has indeed arrived for me to measure your hearts." His gaze shifted toward each of them in turn. Something ancient and profound pressed on their spirits, sifting through their deeds, their secrets and regrets. Dawnland stepped forward. Though her legs quivered, she maintained a steady voice. "My mother is dying," she said. "I have heard the legends of a sacred lotus growing near your realm, its petals rumored to cure any mortal ailment. I beg your benevolence, if it pleases you, allow me to bring back a flower for her. I will do anything you ask." The Emperor observed her for a long moment. Then its massive head swiveled toward Gangson. The blacksmith's son removed the war-worn dagger that he had strapped to his belt. "I took a life," he confessed. His voice was halting, but he continued with the weight of remorse. It was not in self-defense, but in anger. My rage burned too fiercely, and I took everything from that man. I've sought atonement for years. If judgment must come, I ask that it falls upon me alone, not my family. Finally, those piercing eyes fell on Meilin. Shivers coursed through her body, but she met the Emperor's gaze. She lifted the lute she carried, pressing it against her chest. With trembling hands, she opened her mouth in an attempt to sing, but only a thread of a whisper formed. Tears glistened in her eyes as she realized how deeply her tragedy still clung to her. The Emperor regarded her, and a ripple spread across the lake like a collective sigh of empathy. He returned his attention to Yu Shen. "You, who carry the knowledge of the ancients in your mind, step forward." Slowly, Yu Shen rose from his bow and followed the Emperor's silent summons. Each step felt heavier, as though the gravitational pull of the lake had grown 100-fold. When he stood at the water's edge, he felt the barest touch of water swirl around his feet. "You have studied the codex of your ancestors," the Emperor said. "Tell me, mortal scholar, what do these legends say of my purpose?" Yu Shen managed to speak. "They say that your wrath is the closing note of an era gone astray, and your mercy is the seed of a new cycle. They say, too, that your power is beyond mortal reckoning. Still, you hold the realms of heaven and earth in a delicate balance, ensuring that neither side collapses." The Emperor's glow intensified. A kernel of truth lies in those words. Yet mortals are quick to abandon virtue for vanity. My power is not to be misused. Your heart shall be weighed. Should you be deemed worthy, the cycle might continue. Dark clouds boiled overhead, revealing the swirling shapes of translucent serpents in the sky, perhaps lesser spirits, or the silhouettes of the Emperors. A swirling spiral of mist formed beyond them, shaping into a towering archway of water where ghostly illusions flickered, revealing the misdeeds of countless souls across Wujiang. Scenes flashed. A warlord hoarding grain during a famine, a merchant cheating peasants out of their harvest, a young official mistreating those beneath him. The Emperor's voice boomed with an undercurrent of sadness. "Mortals have grown unbridled again. I have awakened to cull the selfish and the cruel." At this, Dawnland stepped forward, tears brimming in her eyes. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said, her tone wavering yet determined. "Not all mortals are lost. Some strive to protect life, to spread kindness. Many labor hard day and night, receiving only pain in return. If you judge the entire realm, please remember those who are innocent. Show mercy if you can." A low growl resonated, as though the Emperor wrestled with an ancient conflict. One of the swirling spirit shapes descended and circled around Dawnland, brushing her cheeks like a breeze. It felt like a test, exploring the sincerity of her words. Jengxin, Meilin, and Yu Sheng closed in around Dawnland, as if sharing in her stance. Silence reigned for what felt like an eternity. At last, the Emperor lowered his colossal head until his whiskers brushed the water's surface. "In your plea," he said, "I hear the fragments of mortal redemption. Yet redemption must be earned, proven through action." All at once, the archway of water behind them sputtered with new visions. One scene displayed a city known as Changzhou, now under the iron rule of a tyrannical governor. Soldiers tore through the streets, harassing citizens. Children were separated from parents, and an old scholar was dragged away for daring to speak out. His books burnt in the public square. The Emperor's voice rose like thunder. "There in Chengzhou the cries of the oppressed are loudest. If you would seek redemption, go there. Confront the darkness within your own kind. Should you succeed, I may reconsider the severity of my judgment upon Wujian." Without hesitation, Yu Sheng and Gengxin exchanged determined looks. Dawnland knew that if she wished to save her mother, she must complete whatever trial the Emperor demanded. Meilin swallowed, summoning resolve. She too realized that if she found the courage to stand against cruelty, perhaps she might recover her lost voice, or at least restore the melody in her heart. Before they could respond, coils of spectral energy encircled the four mortals, lifting them momentarily off the ground. A violent gust of wind howled across the lake, and with a single beat of thunder, they vanished from the lakeshore. They reappeared in the outskirts of Changzhou, disoriented among a cluster of twisted willow trees. Evening had fallen, and the city's gates were locked. Guards patrolled the walls with torches, scanning the area with stern vigilance. Emaciated refugees huddled in makeshift tents alongside a muddy ditch, begging for scraps. A hush of dread hovered in the air, as though the city itself were a prisoner to the darkness reigning within. Gingsin removed his dagger, gaze hardened with purpose. "I've been waiting for a chance to prove that I can do more than destroy," he said quietly. "Let's free these people." Dawn Lan nodded, stepping forward to offer food and herbal tinctures to a woman cradling a sick child. The woman began to sob in gratitude, her tears carving trails through her dirt-covered cheeks. The group spent the night learning about the governor's tyranny. Citizens were forced to surrender most of their earnings and harvests as tribute, while the governor and his cronies indulged in sumptuous feasts. Anyone who objected suffered punishment, property confiscation, forced labor, or worse. Resistance movements were swiftly crushed. Yu Sheng, shaken to the core, recognized that this tyranny was precisely the sort of mortal wrongdoing that gave the Dragon Emperor cause to unleash storms and floods. Justice, it seemed, would be found only through courageous acts of defiance. At dawn, they decided on a plan. Undermine the governor's authority by exposing his cruelties to the entire populace, inciting them to stand together. Mei Lin, though she could not speak, offered her musical talents. She composed a mournful but inspiring tune on her lute, which Dawnlan used to gather clusters of people in secret. Through the human chain of whispers, they spread stories of the Emperor's awakening, a sign that the time had come to break the gilded cage. As the plan took shape, Gengsin guided small groups to sabotage the governor's soldiers by night, loosening the bolts on weapon racks, dismantling catapults, leaving half the city's guard defenseless. Yu Sheng, recalling strategic passages from his father's codex, orchestrated a hidden network of outraged citizens, each assigned specific tasks to paralyze the regime. Still, their hearts throbbed with terror, for if they were caught, the consequences would be severe. They had no illusions about mortal armies standing a real chance against a well-equipped force, yet the fervor of unity fueled them. On the eve of the final strike, they gathered in a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of Changzhou. Mei Lin played the sorrowful tune once more, coaxing tears from the crowd. Then, in a startling moment, she drew a breath. Her voice, lost for so long, cracked through the silence. The note was raw, but it carried immeasurable emotion. Gasps swept through the assembly as her trembling voice joined the lute's melody. The resonance swelled, as though heaven itself listened. A hush came over everyone, and tears now flowed freely. Mei Lin's voice, once extinguished by tragedy, was reignited by the cause of justice. That night, hope blossomed in every heart. They resolved to act at dawn. When dawn finally broke, they emerged from alleyways and hidden cellars to converge upon the governor's palace. The unsuspecting guards, disarmed by previous sabotage, scrambled in confusion. Hordes of citizens brandishing farming tools and makeshift weapons inundated the courtyard. Dawnlan's eyes scanned for any sign of the governor, while Gengsin led a skirmish near the main gates, fighting with a discipline tempered by guilt and a determination to protect rather than kill. Yu Sheng steered the throng, letting them use the palace walls as cover from the few archers that remained. Suddenly, the palace doors flew open, revealing the governor's retinue. At the center stood the governor himself, clad in an ornate robe. Towering above him was a heavily armored champion wielding a massive iron mace. Seeing the rebellious crowd, the governor sneered. "Insurrection!" he spat. "I'll bleed every single one of you if you dare sully my threshold." Before the throng could respond, the champion charged. Each swing of the mace shattered cobblestones, sending chunks of rubble flying. Citizens scattered in terror. Gengsin shot forward, brandishing his dagger to distract the champion, but each blow from the mace threatened to crush him. Gengsin dodged repeatedly, searching for an opening. Mei Lin's voice rose from behind the crowd, accompanied by the gentle strum of the lute. The melody enchanted the air, igniting courage in those who listened. Something of that music kindled in Gengsin's spirit, fueling a righteous fury. With a desperate lunge, he parried the champion's massive mace, slipping under the guard. The champion staggered backward, and Gengsin delivered a swift strike to disable him. The crowd cheered. Seizing the moment, Yu Sheng confronted the governor directly, holding a staff he'd taken from a disarmed guard. Though lacking in martial prowess, Yu Sheng's conviction was unwavering. "No more," he shouted, voice echoing across the courtyard. "Release your hold on these people." The governor's face twisted maliciously. He barked a command at his remaining soldiers, who hesitated, uncertain. Their hesitation proved fatal to his authority. Seeing the throng rising against them and recalling the sabotage of their weapons, the soldiers slowly lowered their arms. Outnumbered and cornered, the governor snarled, then attempted to flee through a side passage. Dawnlan intercepted him, raising her herbal staff. "Stand down," she said, voice trembling but resolute. Her mother's life flickered in her mind. If she failed here, the Emperor's judgment might doom them all. Realizing he was trapped, the governor tried to bribe them. "All the gold you want," he wheezed, eyes darting. "Absolute power, I can grant you rank and fortune." Dawnlan shook her head. "We want justice, not gold. And we want healing for those you have hurt." She glanced at the crowds converging. Even the children stared with indignation. The governor sank to his knees as the masses closed in, realizing the game was over. Freed from tyranny, the city erupted into celebration. Cheers and cries mingled with tears of relief. Families reunited. The gates were flung open, and the refugees outside gradually trickled in, receiving embraces and food. Malin's renewed lyrical voice soared above the city's rooftops, an anthem of liberation that drew even the morning sunlight into play. In that moment, the four travelers recognized the Emperor's trial was nearly complete. A swirl of spectral wind descended upon the courtyard, swirling dust and leaves into a vortex. The shimmering coils of the Emperor's presence materialized overhead, invisible to most of the citizenry, but revealed to the four who had invoked his name. A thunderous voice, calmer now, filled the minds of Yu Sheng, Dawnlan, Genshin, and Mei Lin. "You have shown me that mortals can triumph over their own darkness. I sense sincerity in your hearts. The cycle need not end in destruction this century. Behold, I grant my reprieve to Wu Jing." The swirling wind glowed, and out of the vortex descended a single white lotus blossom, pure as newly fallen snow, faintly adorned with threads of golden light. Dawnlan's breath caught in her throat. Feeling tears on her cheeks, she accepted the lotus into her trembling hands. The Emperor's rumbling voice resonated. "Heal those in need. Let this flower be a symbol of hope, but remember, should mortals again lose their way, I shall rise once more to weigh every heart." With that, the glow faded. The Emperor's presence departed from the city, its essence carried on the faint echo of distant thunder. In the courtyard, the newly freed citizens marveled at Dawnlan's flower, uncertain of its origin, but sensing its divine nature. In hushed tones, they spoke of their gratitude and the wonder of this day. Gengsin handcuffed the disgraced governor, leading him to a makeshift cell. Yu Sheng and Mei Lin locked eyes, their spirits bound by the knowledge they had done the unimaginable. When the dust of the revolution settled, the four travelers journeyed back to the entrance. Weeks passed along the way, for they stayed to assist in reorganizing Changju's governance, distributing resources to the starving and tending to the wounded. Only when the city stood on the cusp of a brighter era did they depart. Eager to deliver the news to the Emperor, the trial was resolved. Casting their shadows across the forest floor once more, they followed the winding path, passing the pine sentinels in the foothills until the turquoise expanse of the lake came back into view. The moon hung above them this time, spotlighting the rippling waters in silver. Without the need for any incantations, the Emperor's presence rose from the depths in a graceful arc. Although still majestic, the Emperor's form appeared more tranquil, as if the storms of anger had subsided. Dawnlan held up the lotus. "Your Majesty," she said, voice trembling with reverence, "thank you for trusting us. This lotus saved my mother's life upon our return journey. The people you tested have proven their worth. Changzhou is free, its citizens united in hope rather than fear." A deep, resonant growl filled the air, but this time it almost sounded like a benevolent rumble, an acceptance of the mortal realm's progress. The Emperor then swirled around Mei Lin, who stood braced with her instrument in hand. She bowed her head, silently offering a song of gratitude. Her newfound voice wrapped around the hush of nature like a lullaby. Next, the Emperor turned to Gengxin, whose remorse had fueled his determination to protect others at Changzhou. Something in the beast's molten gaze seemed to grant Gengxin a sense of closure. And finally, the Emperor addressed Yu Sheng's abiding thirst for knowledge, the intangible drive to safeguard stories for future generations. "Mortal hearts are fickle, but the spark of redemption remains," whispered the Emperor's mental voice. "Watch over it, nurture it, and let others learn. 100 years from now, I shall awaken again. May I witness a realm that cherishes virtue over greed." At these words, the Emperor's coiled body gleamed in the moonlight, gradually sinking back into the water. Streams of light followed, enveloping him in an otherworldly radiance until, at last, only the gentle ripple across the lake's surface remained. Faintly, in the distance, thunder rolled, its tone no longer threatening, but more a distant reminder of the cycle's inevitable turning. Though the Emperor's form had vanished, the transformation he incited in the mortal world reverberated like a chime in the hearts of the four travelers. They lingered by the lakeshore for a long time, absorbing the tranquility of the night. Gengxin placed a hand on Yu Shen's shoulder. "We have done what needed to be done," he said, relief mingling with fatigue. Mei Lin, smiling in her reborn voice, began to hum a gentle tune that resonated along the ripples. Dawnlan closed her eyes, remembering how her mother's face lit up when the lotus's healing properties coursed through her bloodstream. All of them realized they carried forward a mythic responsibility to protect the land and guide their people, lest greed and cruelty begin festering again. Over the course of the next few days, they departed one by one. Dawnlan returned home, cherishing every moment spent with her mother. Mei Lin traveled throughout Wujiang, singing songs of faith and revolution. Gengxin took up the role of a peacemaker, bridging rival groups to ensure that violence for the sake of dominance would never again consume them. Yu Sheng wandered, copying scrolls and distributing knowledge far and wide to help shape a wiser populace. None of them forgot the swirling turquoise waters of that enchanted lake. Across Wujiang, subtle changes took root. The once tyrannized city of Changzhou reorganized under a more benevolent structure. The warlord who had hoarded grain found himself without allies, forced to atone for his deeds. Rice grew plentiful, and the rains returned. Neither scorching drought nor devastating flood arrived that season, a testament to the Emperor's temporary benevolence. Villagers told the story of how 4 travelers appealed to the Dragon Emperor and carried out a mission of justice. Children listened slack-jawed, holding on to every word. Generations hence, the story would morph into songs, ballads of the Emperor rising from the deep to weigh mortal hearts, and of the bravery of those who dared to demand redemption in a world stained by cruelty. Yet throughout every retelling, hope remained the refrain. Hope that even when the Emperor's wrath was awakened, mortal hearts could seduce it back into slumber with sincere acts of goodness. The immortals who soared in the sky and swam in hidden lakes might watch, but in the end, it was humanity's own choices that lit the path, determining whether storms ravaged the land or parted peacefully. In that sense, the Dragon Emperor's judgment was simply the reflection of mortal deeds given shape by divine power. And so, each gleaming sunrise and each twinkling starry night reminded the people of Wujiang that, despite mortal frailty, the capacity to rise above adversity lay waiting in every human heart. When next the Emperor stirred from his palace in the deep, perhaps he would find fewer reasons to scold the land with lightning and flood. Perhaps, with each passing century, the era of destructive judgments would inch closer to an end. The travellers themselves lived on in the annals of folk memory, their names woven into the ephemeral tapestry of myth. They served as living proof that anyone, not just heroes ordained by fate, could step forward to defend the virtues of compassion and unity. From booming city squares to quiet farmsteads, the legend thrived. If one listened carefully near the lake on certain nights, one might still hear a faint melody floating over the waters, an echo of Maylin's voice carried by the breeze, or perhaps, in the gentle lapping of the waves, the unseen whisper of the Emperor reminding humankind that the ultimate judge slumbered just beneath the surface, ready to rise again when next the world cried out for justice or punishment. And so the ancient lake remained, silent yet ever vigilant, holding within its sapphire mirror the promise of retribution for wickedness and reward for virtue. Life continued across Wujiang, tinted by cautionary tales of mortality's fragile balance. But the Dragon Emperor had slumbered once more, satisfied by the demonstration of moral courage, at least for this century.